Last time we looked at how to create the enemy bats on the screen. However, the enemy bats that is created isn't very threatening, so it's always up at the top of the screen. So in the first part of this video, so let's fine tune the movement of this bat so that it will be a little bit more interesting. Now, if you remember, you click on the bat icon, that we have this forever loop, which causes the bat to circle around the screen. Now, if you just keep circling, it will be quite boring. So why don't we design it such that after it circles for a while, it will fly towards the dragonfly to sort of try to kill it. So let's move this block out of the forever loop. Let's remove the forever and let's put in the repeat loop. So this repeat loop will have a counter here. So that means it's a fixed number of times or iterations. So move the original block back into the repeat. And to repeat a constant number of times would be not very interesting. So let's do some randomness in it. So on the left hand side, click on operators and then drag the pick a random number here. So this is where you can do a little bit of experimentation. So what I would do, I would just change to random from 30 to 60. Okay, so that means it's going to repeat this many times and then it will stop. But in order, instead of stopping it, what I think would be more interesting is to make it point towards the dragonfly and try to fly into it. So on the left hand side, click on motion, and then you can drag and drop, point towards block, and choose dragonfly there. Now, in order to fly towards the dragonfly, we need to use the control. Click on the control tab and drag and drop the forever there. So, and going back to the motion tab, and let's drag the move 10 step inside the forever. So what it means is after it has repeated that many times, it will point towards the dragonfly and move 10 steps forever. So let's take a look and see what's the end result. Okay, so as we move the dragonfly, it will follow the dragonfly, try to chase him. Okay, so that looks good. But you can see that the bat is at the bottom of the screen. So because we didn't do anything to get rid of it. Now a bat can be killed by either reaching to the bottom of the screen or touching the dragonfly, or we are going to add bullets to the dragonfly. Now we are going to create a sprite for the bullet. So I choose a sprite called a ball. Right, again it's a little too big, so let's change it to 30 and also hide it so it's not visible until it's invoked. Okay, now go back to the dragonfly. Event tab, you drag the when space key pressed onto the coding panel. Okay. So when the key space key is pressed, I want to create bullets. Okay. So go to the control, create a clone of the ball. Now to call it a ball is probably a little too generic, so let's rename it. Click on the ball and let's call it dragonfly bullets. Okay. Go now in the dragonfly bullet, we want to control the movement of the dragonfly bullet whenever it is created as a clone. So you drag and drop the when I start as a clone. So when it is first started as a clone, the first thing we want to do is to make sure that this clone starts at the location of the dragonfly, because that's where it is created. So let's click on motion and drag and drop this go to random position block, and instead of a random position we change it to the dragonfly. Okay. And after it's been created, we want to start shooting the bullet upwards. So click on control and scroll down a little bit, and then you'll see this repeat until block. So let's move it over. So when the dragonfly bullet is created, we want to move up until it either reaches the top of the screen or if it hits one of the bats. Right? So inside the condition, let's click on operators and choose the OR condition and put it inside the placeholder. Okay, so and then choose sensing. The first condition would be when it is touching the edge or when it is touching a bat. And when within the repeat loop, before it is touching the edge or touching the bat, we want to move up. So we click on motion and we can select change move 10 steps. Now in order for this move 10 steps to work properly, we have to make sure that the dragonfly ball has the right direction. So in the direction here, we want to make sure that it's pointing upwards. So click on it and change it to 0 so that it's pointing upwards. Now when this loop is completed, meaning that it's either touching the edge or touching the bat, then we want to remove itself. So click on the control and then scroll down a little bit until you see this delete this clone, drag and drop it to the end of the script. So let's give it a try. Now if you press space, oops, nothing is showing. Oh, now let's stop it. The reason is because the main dragonfly bullet is hidden. When the clone is created, we should invoke the show. So let's click on look, scroll down a little bit, and then drag and drop the show block to after the dragonfly. So let's give it a try again. Yeah, there you go. So as you can see, when it hits the bats, it disappears, and also when it when it hits the top of the screen, it also disappears. Okay, so that looks good. So next, we are going to show you how to get rid of the bats on the screen. So let's click on the bats and add a new block here. So on the left hand side, click on control, scroll down and choose the when I start as a clone. Now if you look at the left hand side of the code, this block of code is used to control the movement of the bats. On the right hand side, I want to start a new block which controls the life cycle of the bats. So let's add the forever loop there and add a condition. So the first condition that we are going to add is if the bat touches the bullet, the dragonfly bullet. If it touches the dragonfly bullet, then what I want to do is I want to delete this clone. So go to Control, scroll down a little bit, and delete it. Okay. Similarly, if it touches the dragonfly, it should also remove itself. So go back to Control, select the if then block, and then go back to Sensing, put the touching block, and say touching the dragonfly. And again, we want to remove this cone. Lastly, we also want to delete this cone when the bat reaches the end of the screen. So let's add that. So because we only want to remove the bat at the bottom of the screen, so we use the operator less than, and then the first placeholder we want to put the Y position. So on the left hand side, click on Motion, scroll down to the Y positions, and then on the right hand side, the Y position would be the minimum Y position. So let's click on Variable. Looks like we don't have the minimum Y position yet, so let's create it. So let's call min Y. Okay, so we don't need to show it, so let's remove it. And let's drag and drop the min Y there first. And also go back to Control and add the delete this clone there. Now the min Y is initialized to 0, so we want to change it. So go to the stage. Similar to other variables, we want to initialize it in the stage. So go back to the stage first, click on variable, and then drag and drop the set here. Now the order of these set statements is not important, so you can put it anywhere you want. The min Y is -180. Okay, so now let's give it a try and see if the bat can disappear nicely. All right, so when it touches the bullet, it disappears. When it touches the batch of the screen, it disappears. And also when it touches the dragonfly, it also disappears. Okay, so that looks really good. In the next video, we're going to show you how to do score counting and manage players' life.